Hello, I hope you are well. Welcome to what is episode 35 of the Nicole Allen PT podcast. This is also the first one that I'm going to be putting on YouTube. So if you are listening and you prefer a YouTube video, you can find me on YouTube. I'll put the link in the notes. And if you are watching on YouTube and you want to explore more of my podcast episodes, I will also put that link in the notes too. So you can just binge on as many episodes as you want, because there's about there's 34 other episodes over there. So today's topic is one that I am super passionate about. It is something that I have struggled with myself. It's something that I've explored with so many of my clients and successfully pulled them out of this habit and this behavioural pattern. I was asked recently on one of my client check-ins about emotional eating, and the person who asked about it was recognising that they were in a pattern of feeling quite low in mood, feeling quite anxious, feeling quite frustrated, and in order to make themselves feel better, they would be comforting themselves with food, which is a super common pattern, especially in the women I work with, because we are short on time. We will go for the quickest available dopamine hit, whether that be scrolling on our phone, whether that be emotional eating or something else. And this is not necessarily always conscious, it is subconscious, and it's a pattern that we can break, but it does take effort. So the question that I got asked was, how can I stop emotional eating? Now, the first thing to recognise with emotional eating is it's, as much as it can feel like an unhelpful behaviour, it has got a positive intention. So it is trying to tell ourselves something. It is trying to tell us that there is a need somewhere that's not being met. Now, what our body is doing, what our mind is doing, is trying to fulfill this need in the easiest possible way. And what it will do is it will look for, whether it's an unhelpful behaviour or not, it will look for the easiest way to do this. And that's because your brain is not wired for anything other than efficiency. Over time, repeated thoughts, emotions, and actions form neural pathways in your brain, and essentially that's shortcuts. It's basically like shortcuts that make these behaviours automatic. Now, what we'll find is that you'll have a trigger that will trigger your emotional eating. You will have a routine, so you'll have a series of steps that you follow, and then you'll get the reward at the end of it. And your brain doesn't distinguish between unhelpful and helpful behaviours, unhelpful or helpful actions, thoughts, whatever. It just goes with what's familiar. So what the first thing to identify is what your triggers are. So these can be anything, and in my experience with emotional eating, they can be things like anger, tiredness, loneliness, low mood. They can be hunger, not always hunger, but they can be hunger. It can be stress. It can be so many different things. And once we've got an idea of what those triggers are, and I would really encourage having a think about it and thinking, what situations do I find myself emotionally eating? Think back to the last time you emotionally ate and look back as if it was a timeline. And where did those actions, the following actions, where did they come from? Like, what was the trigger? What was the start point? So, then once you've identified the trigger, you can look at like what the pattern is. Like, once you've realised like when does it show up, you can figure out what the pattern is, and you can then put an alternative pattern in place. So let's say, for example, you might have had a super stressful day at work. You've eaten like a little bit on the go all day. You've not really eaten a proper meal. You've been having coffee for breakfast with something small, like a cereal bar. You've grabbed a meal deal on your lunch because you've not got a long lunch, so you just grab what you can. And then you get home, you've picked the kids up from school, you they're like whittering on in your ear about having a snack and having a drink and mum I'm bored and all of this stuff. And you know that you're out and about, you've got like, I don't know, you've got to take your daughter to dance class, you've got to take your son to rugby, whatever. And you know that actually it's going to be a really long time before you actually get to eat your next meal. And all these feelings of stress, anger, like hunger, frustration might be coming up. And you might think, right, well, I'm just gonna, I might distract myself, I might scroll on my phone. You might scroll on your phone, you'll see people who are seem like they're doing better than you, because remember, social media is a highlight reel, and then feel like low mood, feel bad about yourself. You'll go into the kitchen, and just to have a brief moment of time where you can feel better, you will eat something out of the snack cupboard. It might be a packet of crisps, it might be 2 packets of crisps, it might be, I don't know, a slice of cake, it might be a bag of chocolate, like whatever it might be. But for that brief moment, that's the routine that you go through, and then your reward is that feeling of like happiness, that feeling of comfort that you get from that eating, whatever it is. And then what I will say right now is emotionally eating is normal. It's not a bad thing. It's not a negative behaviour. I don't like to use the word negative. It's not an unhelpful behaviour. But what is unhelpful is then your response to it. So then what may happen is you might feel guilty for that. You might feel shame. Well, I've had this, I don't deserve to have any tea now. Or I'm going to be super strict with myself, or I'm going to make myself over-exercise. And that's what we call a disordered eating pattern. And what we want to do is we want to try and break that pattern. And the way that we do this is not by just stopping it and just hoping that by sheer willpower we will manage. That will not happen. Highly likely that will not happen. Because your brain needs reasoning to understand things, your brain has got these neural pathways, we need to replace those neural pathways with something else. And I bet you didn't think you were here for a psychology lesson, did you, when you thought about emotional eating? But this is literally what it is. It is how your brain is responding to a trigger, and how you've got to then create new patterns, which is difficult in the beginning. Like you've got, like you here, this is your old pattern, like you're going back. I'm using my fingers if you're watching this on the podcast, if you're listening to this on the podcast and not YouTube. You'll have this old pattern that is a repeating pattern, that's really easy, that is really almost subconscious, almost not really realising you're doing it. And then we've got the new pattern, which will feel really fucking difficult. Sorry, shouldn't have swore. Which will feel really difficult. It will feel hard, it will feel uncomfortable. It will feel like, oh, I don't want to do this. But for you to get where you want to be, this is what you've got to do. This is where we've got to go. And the more you go for that new pattern, the easier it will feel, the more subconscious it will be, and the more familiar it will be to your brain, your mind, and then that's how you sort of overcome the emotional eating. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through what may be a more helpful pattern. There are tons, absolutely tons. What I would recommend to do is write a list of the steps that you would have taken before. When you had that time in your head where you last emotionally ate, write down the steps, and it might be 5, 6, 7 steps. And then I want you to write a new pattern, and this time what we want is we want the same outcome, we want the same. So let's say from that you got that comfort and that feeling of like happiness from emotional eating, we want the same outcome. So we want to write down, like, let's say this trigger comes in again. Like, I'm going to talk in a minute about how you can prevent that trigger sometimes, not all the time. How you can make it easier to deal with the trigger. So let's say that trigger comes in and you take a deep breath just to allow yourself to get out of your brain and into your body. You take a deep breath, you might, instead of going on your phone, you might make a conscious effort to throw your phone across the room. Like, leave your phone alone, put the phone down. You might pause, just distract yourself maybe for 10 minutes. question, am I feeling hungry or is it something else? If it is something else, it may be tiredness, it may be loneliness, it may be anger, frustration. If it is something else, what else can you do to deal with that emotion in a positive way, in a more helpful way? So for example, you might be home from the school run, you might be home from work, you might come home and you feel absolutely wired, stressed out because of the sort of day that you've had, and immediately your old response would be to scroll on your phone, go to the cupboard, grab something to eat because you know you're not going to get your next meal for another couple of hours. What you might do instead is ring a friend or call your mum, have a conversation with her. Like if connection and loneliness is something that's coming up, if it's tiredness or if it's anger or if it's frustration, you might want to get outside, go outdoors. You might want to just move your body, do some stretching, I don't know, put some loud music on, dance around the kitchen. Like literally whatever like comes up, try it. And you might have to try a few different things, but it's about replacing that pattern so that you've got a series of things where you can be like, okay, so if I feel like this, I'm going to do this. This is what I'm going to do. If I feel frustrated, I am going to go out for a walk. I'm going to call a friend. I'm going to watch something on TV that might make me laugh. Like trying to get out of that habit and that pattern in a more helpful way. So it's about replacing the pattern more than it is trying to just cut it off and stop it altogether. And sometimes as you're doing it, it will be harder for you to break the pattern really early on, but sometimes you might get to like step 5 and then feel like, oh, I'm recognizing this is an old pattern. What can I do? Like, let's break the pattern, let's do something else. And you might do something different to help deal with whatever emotions are coming up. So I hope that helps. I think that's everything. It's about finding out what your trigger is. So identifying what that trigger is. Then once you know what that trigger is, what are the actions? Like what's the routine that you follow? And if you can't think of any, think about the last time this has happened. Think about the last time this has happened, and then think about what reward you get, like what feelings, what comes up, like what you get out of that routine, and then create a new pattern. Like you can create a new pattern so that when that old pattern comes in, you can be like, no, we don't do this anymore. Get up, walk out the room, whatever it is, and start the new pattern, again. And you might have to write it down. Like I would really recommend writing it down. It's something that I've done before to help myself. It's something I've recommended to help clients, and I know it's helped them too. So that would be number 1. Number 2, the second thing you can do to not stop but prevent or prolong emotional eating is, for God's sake, eat enough through the day. Stop waking up and having a coffee for breakfast with a cereal bar and then having a rubbish sandwich with, not that sandwiches are bad, like there's nothing wrong with a sandwich, with a Diet Coke and a twirl for your lunch, and then leaving loads of time between lunch and your evening meal before you actually eat again. Like, have a proper structure to your day when it comes to food. You need to plan this out because it's not going to happen by itself. You need to have a structure to your day when it comes to food. You need to make sure you are eating enough, you are having a decent breakfast, which is balanced, high in protein, enjoyable, lots of fibre to keep you full and satisfied till lunch. Then at lunchtime, having a high protein lunch, enjoyable, again, something easy that you can prepare in advance. If it is a sandwich, make sure it's a decent fill-in sandwich and not like, I don't know, cheese or something. Like, make sure it's got some protein in it, and make sure that whatever you're pairing it with is high in protein so that you're going to be filled up for as long as possible until your evening meal. And then there's nothing wrong with a snack, and I call it a mini meal with my clients, and this is really common in the women I work with. So I work mostly with working mums. Around 3, 4, 5 o'clock, you're not ready for your tea yet, you're not ready for your dinner yet, but it's been hours since you've last eaten, so you need to have something, and that can be a high protein snack, it can be a yogurt bowl, it can be, I don't know, I have no idea, like cottage cheese and crackers, it can be like some toast, it can be literally something substantial, not like a Skinny Whip bar or whatever 99 calorie snack you've been buying and filling your cupboards with, because that's not going to do anything, because then you'll just want to eat 3 of them, and then you might as well just have had a normal chocolate bar anyway. But but yeah, like have a proper substantial snack, and what that will do is that will keep you eating regularly through the day, so you're not getting overly hungry, and it's not going to be as easy for you to lean into those emotional eating habits. Then once you've got a structure to your day, you're figuring out what works well for you, what works well for your routine, you will feel like you're not as hungry anymore, like you'll be well fueled, you'll be focused, you'll have energy, you'll find losing weight so much easier, and you won't be diving into these old habits, because you'll recognise then what hunger feels like and what fullness feels like. And once you know them two feelings, once you really, really understand them and how they feel in your body, then you will be able to, when you walk up to that cupboard, you'll be like, do you know what? I'm not even hungry. I don't even want this. And the amount of times that has happened recently with my clients, I could not tell you. But it's such an amazing moment, because that's the start. Like, that's the pivotal moment when you can actually be like, do you know what? No, that won't serve me. I'm not actually hungry. What I actually am is I'm pissed off because someone at work annoyed me. My boss has landed a massive project on me, wants it done yesterday, and everyone just wants to take from me and not actually give me anything. And then, I don't know, you give everything up, put trainers on, get outside for a walk. And you can, when you come up with these patterns and these habits, it becomes so much easier. So that is I would say very brief. I've not even shared any of the tools or coping strategies I use with my clients. If you are someone who is not a client, or if you are and any of this has resonated with you and you want extra support with it, please just message me and I will be more than happy to help. I'll put all of my contact details in the notes below or in the description. And if you find that this is helpful and you want to share it with someone else who might find this helpful too, please do so. Other than that, I'm going to get on to the next episode, and I will see you next time.